Hi, welcome to Awkwardly Awesome. Normally I don't drop two videos in such quick succession, but I had a chance to go to the place where I upload my videos today. And yesterday I did it through my home internet here, which took 6.5 hours, I think. And I can do it at the other place in 1.5. So I decided that I was going to shoot another one today. Just a second, I have to make sure the camera's on. And it is. Awesome. All right. Today my talk is just called Life is Good. It's I haven't always been very positive in my life. I've often looked for the bad things, looked for what's wrong in life, looked for how things could be better. And when you're working for somebody and you have the job of being a consultant and you're there to help them improve their business, maybe that's a good thing. But in regular everyday life, it tends to be a little bit wearing on people, I've found. So I decided that I would put together a list of things and reasons for why I should be grateful and why I should be happy for the things that I'm going through in my life. Every morning, I begin my day with a prayer. I think everyone should. You can pray to the universe, you can pray to God, you can pray to Yahweh, you can pray to Krishna, you can ask Buddha to intercede on your behalf. I don't really care who you pray to, but I think it helps center the mind and bring you to a place of gratitude. No matter how bad my life is, or how difficult things seem, I always try to start my prayer off with this line. Thank you for the gross experience of my life. By gross, I mean gross and net. There's like a lot of people only are thankful for the good things. Thank you for the good food we have. Thank you for the friends. Thank you for, the nice town we can live in. Thank you for the peaceful environment. But anyone can be grateful for good times. That takes no effort whatsoever. It's easy. And I don't think that's what we're here in life to do. We're not just here to do the easy things. And so I make a point of being thankful for everything. Absolutely everything. If this was, I believe gross and net comes from fishing, where you have the gross catch, and then you have the net catch. And the net catch is after you've cleaned all the net. Gross and net just means dirty and clean, as far as I know. So once you have the cleaned catch, everything else gets kind of shoved back in the sea, unless you're one of those fishing units that keeps everything, which I wish you guys wouldn't. The sea still needs some of its creatures. But I've learned that growth only comes through pain and suffering. All of the cream cheese icing in the world isn't going to teach you anything about your character, except that maybe, and I love cream cheese icing. It's one of my weaknesses. I'm probably going to get a cinnamon bun with cream cheese icing today. Make a point of stopping at the Blueberry Mountain store, and they have amazing cinnamon buns, and I love going there. So I'm not bashing cream cheese icing. I love it, but it has to be in moderation. If you're asking for extra cream cheese on your bagel, you're probably overdoing it. Bagels are already a pretty heavy meal breakfast. You add a double helping of cream cheese on that, and it's not going to do you any favors. Character only grows in adversity. It's adversity is what shapes us. It's you don't shape wood by giving it nice things or varnishing it. That's the finish. You shape wood by heating it and steaming it and bending it, or by cutting away at it and chopping away bits of it, chopping away the bits that don't serve the final purpose. The trials of life are the rain that causes character to grow. Just like in a garden, if you had sunny days every day, you wouldn't get too many of them because you'd end up starving. All of our food requires rain. Rain is one of the most beautiful pieces or conditions of the atmosphere, in my opinion. I grew up overseas in Papua New Guinea, over West New Britain province. That's where this blue backdrop came from. It shows kind of the coastline of where I grew up. And I grew up all along that coastline, but this is kind of where I had the most memories. And the rain is a constant feature there. It's, you know, not constant, but you get rainy season and dry season. We didn't get winter at all. And rainy season was like 5 months of rain. You might get 2 weeks of sun sprinkled through there in half days. But other than that, you had rain. Rain, 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 rain. Leaden, gray skies hanging heavy over you. Everything was wet. If you wanted to do anything outside, you did it in the rain. I can't count the number of days I've stood fishing in the rain with the water pouring over me. And we're talking rain, like serious rain. I've only experienced rain here in Canada once like that, maybe twice. And those events always accompanied flooding. When I lived in Dawson Creek one time, I ran out the door, around the corner, because the rain was pouring onto the top of the air conditioner so hard that it was running into the house. So I ran out to put a towel up across the crack to wick that water away. I had the towel all ready. I took off my shirt. I ran outside, jumped up on a thing, threw the towel across, jumped back off it was like a bucket or a chunk of wood, and just so that I used as a step, ran back inside, and I was soaked all the way through. My crotch was soaked. My armpits were soaked. Everything was wet. That's what New Guinea rain was like. The place where I lived for a long time was called Candrian, and we got 360 plus inches of rain every year during 5 months. Well, probably 300 inches of rain during 5 months, and then the other 60 would spread through the dry season. And during the dry season, we loved rain. You get rain in the dry season, and we would be outside playing in it, because it was never cold rain. It was always kind of warm. It was really pleasant rain. It's just when you have 5 months of it straight, 4.5, 5 months with no real serious breaks, it just got old. Got really tiring. I kind of deal with that here now as well with winter. I have like 5 months of winter, and it's pretty hard to deal with sometimes. It's not intolerable, and you get used to it. Like, we're at the point now where it's just about freezing every day, but it's only just freezing. We don't have the minus 20 anymore. We don't have the minus 40, the minus 30, minus 25. That's all Celsius, right? You know, I could crunch the numbers for you, but if you're gonna convert it, it's multiply those numbers by 9, divide it by 5, and add 32, and that's the temperatures that y'all get in the States. I'm not gonna do the math for you this time. When we're only being grateful for the good things that happen in our life, we're being ungrateful for the majority of our experiences. And if it's not the majority of our experiences, it's the seeming majority. You know, the human mind puts 10 times more weight onto a bad event than it does onto a good event. So you literally have to have 10 good things, or 10 good things happen for every single bad thing, in order for the good to outweigh the bad in our minds. So when people are, you know, negative all the time, maybe it just means that they're not getting that 10-to-1 ratio. You know, it's and that's easy to understand. Unless we're grateful for every single thing, grateful for the people that say no to us, grateful for the people who tell us that we have shortcomings in our character, grateful for the times when the food prices rise. If you're not being grateful for those things, you know, and I'm not saying that the food prices rising is a good thing. It's not. It sucks when the prices of food rise. People are able to grow food cheaper and cheaper all the time due to technology, and yet the prices of the food always seems to rise. Maybe that's a function of population. I'm not going to sit here and get into that topic. That's too big of a topic for me to deal with at this time. We aren't here for a vacation. I believe that we're here to learn. I believe that we volunteered to come here. On some spiritual level, I believe we maybe we got bored. Maybe the spiritual experience, maybe we're here just like a video game. You know, people get bored with real life. There's all kinds of cool stuff to do here. They hole up in their house. They turn on a machine that lets them pretend to do things quickly. You know, and maybe we're here to pretend to do things slowly and with difficulty, because that's really what develops our character and what makes us into better people. And that's what shapes our spirit. Once we accept the fact that everything is God's will and we surrender to it, nothing is unbearable. We have to surrender to it, though. You can't just say, oh yeah, I'm happy for everything, I'm grateful for everything, you know, God has a plan for my life, and then go do your own thing. You need to sit down, you need to meditate, you need to really focus on what God has for you to do. Some people say, why is this happening to me? I don't deserve this. But the fact that it's happening means that you deserve it in some level. I mean, Job didn't seem to deserve everything that happened to him, and yet God let it happen. It was God's will that Job went through that trying period. And as such, I'm not even sure what he learned from it, but I know that I learned from it. Every day, I haven't done my Bible reading yet, but every day I read a passage from Job. I read a chapter of Job, because right now my life is a little bit difficult. I'm learning things and I'm moving through things. And I can use the inspiration of somebody who literally had everything torn away from him. And even his closest family members said, just say fuck God and you'll be fine. You know, you're done. He's saying fuck you. Send it right back to him. And Job withstood that. He hung in there, and he made it his own personal dark night of the soul. Made it his own personal dark night of the soul. Everything happens for a reason. We don't need to know what it is. We don't need to understand. Just because God lets you sit in a planning session from time to time doesn't mean you have a permanent seat there. We just need to accept the lessons as they're presented. My greatest growth has always come in my darkest places. Kind of like a mushroom. You know, mushrooms are amazing. They're the closest thing that doesn't move from one spot to animal life. I mean, I guess there's sea anemones and coral and stuff like that. But coral is more like a community. It's like a city of small creatures that don't move. And mushrooms, as far as I know, just sit there. There's some mushrooms that they said if every single spore from that single mushroom were to take root and proliferate, they would take up the entire earth. Just all the spores from one mushroom, which is pretty amazing. Mushrooms, you know, when they spread their seed or spread their spores, it tends to be, you need to cast kind of a wide net, I guess, because mushrooms don't just grow anywhere. They need specific environments in order to do their thing. And I think people do as well. When everything's going well and things are going smoothly for us, the money's coming in, things aren't breaking down in the house, the car's running smoothly, no one's shouting at you, or nobody's telling you that you're doing the wrong thing, it's pretty easy to get full of ourselves and full of pride. And you know, they say, well, it says in Proverbs, pride goeth before the fall. When we think that we're pretty awesome, that's when we need to start looking out. You know, when you're feeling very good about yourself, look for who you can spread that goodness to. Don't just stack it up. That's the easy thing to do. Stack it up for later. You never know when you might need that. Personally, I've stacked up books. That's my weakness. I love books. And I have boxes of books. Boxes of books that I haven't opened in, geez, we're coming up on, it's more than 6 years, probably 7 or 8. And you know, I didn't read those books before when I had them up on the shelf. I sat there, I played video games. I used to do a lot of cocaine. I drank. I played D&D with my friends. I distracted myself in lots of different small ways. and those books just sat on the shelf like ornaments. And these days I'm reading this one. I'm reading The Valley of the Horses, or The Valley of Horses. I've read it before, but I bought it for my mom, and I just bought it, and I gave it to my mom, and she didn't seem interested in reading it, so I picked it up and started reading it again. And it's a really great book. I enjoyed it. Clan of the Cave Bear might have been slightly better. That was a really cool story, but I like this one. This is the first one I read from that series. I think it's I'm not going to get into it. The Earth's Children, I think, is what she ended up calling the series. But it was really good. I went out yesterday and I threw some stones with my sling, just trying to throw them straight. I'm not very good at throwing stones with a sling, but I went out to do it, and I threw 36, and I think 34 of them actually went in the direction I wanted them to go. A couple of them spun off into the snow, and I wasn't going to go dig for them. And I didn't want to overdo it, because it's just like throwing a baseball. You go out and throw and throw and throw on your first day, and you're going to throw your shoulder out. So I didn't do that. I took it easy. I brought a measured number of stones back to my firing spot, and I threw them, at a measured pace. I'm certainly not as good with the sling as the woman in that book, Ayla. She apparently can throw 2 stones in 4 seconds or less. It's a super quick recovery time, which I saw a Chinese guy doing it. He was throwing tennis balls. I've always been afraid that I was going to smack myself in the face, so I never really tried it. But yesterday I managed to catch the cup of the sling, and if I would have had another rock there, I might have been able to get it into the cup, but I wasn't able to get a hold of the second string, so I still suck. When we are grateful for the hard times, we open ourselves up for blessings. The blessings aren't going to come unless God sees that you can take the hard things with a grateful heart and an open spirit. None of us deserve happiness all of the time. Saying that I don't deserve this bad thing that's happened to me, or I don't deserve this difficulty, it's just pompous. It's, who are you to say what you deserve? Are you the arbiter of your life? Do you get to call the score for your life, as it were, to put it in crass terms, I guess? God's the one who's marking score. If you go over and start shouting at God like an angry sports player shouting at the referee, have you ever seen somebody shout at the referee and kick dirt on their shoes and think, yeah, that guy sure made his point. He's doing well, and I'm sure he's going to score higher in the next round that he comes up for a chance to score. Not really. He's probably going to the ref's probably going to keep an eye on him. The ref or the umpire or whatever, right? They're going to keep an eye on him a little bit closer because they saw that he had a bad attitude. And I think God does the same thing with us, or whomever is keeping the karmic score. We all have karmic debts to pay off, and now is the time to settle that bill. The Most High doesn't accept credit cards. We got so used to buying things on credit here in this life. And in truth, every dollar that you spend is based on debt, right? It's like, I'm not going to get into fractional reserve banking and how the IRS / Canada Revenue Canada, I think they reverse it here. I'm not going to get into how they print money. That could be a talk for a whole nother day. That's a huge subject. And no matter how well I explain it, most people aren't going to understand it because it doesn't really make sense. All I can say is that every bill that you have is not a credit note. It's a debt note. And we are the holders of that debt. When you see the number, what the national debt is rising steadily on Wall Street, that number roughly equals the available cash supply, or not even the available cash supply. That roughly equals how much money the nation has accumulated. You don't accumulate wealth on the positive side of the scale. It's all debt. The bankers hold the debt, and they're the creditors. They're the ones who we owe the money to, and every dollar that we get is, look at this, I'm going off on the dollar thing. every dollar that we hold, we owe interest on. That's why you pay, I don't even know if that's why you pay your taxes. It's a perpetual spiral. I think we pay our taxes to pay the insurance on the debt, or the insurance on all of our stuff. Everything is triple insured by the government. Anything that you have is registered. I got to get off this subject because I can go on this all day. Anything that you have is registered, is triple insured. It means if your house burns down, the government collects insurance policy on your house for their benefit. It's because by registering your home with them, you have agreed that they may make use of your assets. Same thing with your car or your child. But after that little diversion, I'm going to try and get back to the subject at hand here. We all have karmic debts to pay off, and now's the time. Oh yeah, I already said that. Just because I say to be grateful for the bad times doesn't mean that we should dwell on them. You know, especially with that fact that it's the easiest thing to do. Once again, easy thing to do. You know, I believe it says the easy path leads to the slaughter in Proverbs. That's probably a paraphrase, and I probably butchered it. But the path that that leads straight to where everyone is going, usually it probably isn't that great of a place. You know, just back to the financial thing, we're all considered government chattel, or to pronounce it correctly, chattel. It's an ancient Anglo-Saxon word, I believe, and I think it has roots in Germanic, and it means cattle. It's when landlords back in the medieval times sold a piece of land, the chattel or the chattel came with it, and that was that which was necessary for farming the land, which was the peasants, it was the people. They were essentially the farm equipment. It was like, yes, I'm selling this piece of farmland, and the tractor comes with it. So does the plow. So do all the grain bins, and so do the barns where the cattle live. We need to use the positive energy that we do collect in life to manifest the positive results that we desire, in spite of the negative. When we are dealing with the negative, it's so easy to look down. You know, our heads naturally tip down when we're feeling bad. But we need to look up in those times, because that's the hard thing to do. You know, look up to that higher purpose. Look to that higher power. Refusing to pay the karmic bill only means that you end up washing dishes. And sometimes, if you have overspent on your karmic bill, you have to take your suit jacket off, bid goodnight to your date, and go into the back to wash dishes. You know, roll up the sleeves of your good shirt, put on an apron, and wash for a few hours to cover the shortfall that you incurred. You know, our life is what we make it, so make it a good one. Accepting whatever comes our way without flinching away from it is the path of strength. That's the manly thing to do, or the womanly thing to do. I'll just digress here for a minute. I have some time. I'm not gonna call people humans. There's reasons for it. A human is a man of color, and when you get into, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being colored or having a darker color of skin. Personally, I grew up in a sun-rich country. I learned to love a well-tanned skin or people with dark skin. It's beautiful. The pale skin that I see around here in winter is slightly off-putting to me. Just with everybody being so pale, they have to paint their faces so that they, or go and pay to stand behind some fluorescent lights or in whatever ultraviolet lights to burn their skin to a more appealing color to their eye. But when you get into the old-fashioned racism, the old-fashioned racists came up with the term human as a human, Hueman, human, a man of color. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. They did. They're the ones who said that a colored man is worth less than a white man. And their standards of racism are rough, really rough. They say that the Swedish are not white enough. I'm serious. The Swedish, the most white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white people that are out there, they aren't white enough because of their history, many generations back, of breeding with the Laplanders. I mean, the Laplanders are beautiful people with a rich culture, but your dyed-in-the-wool, hardcore white racists don't see that. All they see, I'm not even going to use the terms, but they see it in ugly terms. It's not a happy way to live, and it's not a loving way to live. I don't like the term human. I like the term man and woman, both opposite sexes of the race of man. Just like we would call, we have a bull and a cow. Cattle, back to the cattle terms. Uh, you don't say that it's a bull. You don't say that it's a cow. You say it's cattle. We have a different name for them. And just because in our culture and in our language we call them the race of man, men and women have natural born rights. Humans don't. It's a legal term. They the people who pull the strings came up with that term to degrade you. They came up with it to make you into a lesser. And unless you learn how to raise yourself above that, you allow yourself to be that. If you say, well, I believe in human rights. Human rights, that's like saying the cattle's rights, the sheep's rights. You know, same thing with sheeps. You have rams and ewes. We call them sheep as a collective because that's, you know, if it were a race, that's the race of sheep. I'm going to get back to what I was saying, though. Life is good. Chinese philosophers have shared the idea that tragedy and opportunity arrive together. And it's true. When the market goes down, it's a good time to buy. When Bitcoin falls, double down on it. It's kind of a established thing. You know, you want to be in on the Bitcoin thing. I tried to get into Bitcoin when it was 180 bucks a piece. Look at me now. If I would have done that, I probably wouldn't be here talking to y'all because I would have had more important things to do with my money. And I'm not saying that it's not important talking to you. I'm saying it would have been self-important things. We need to keep our heads up and look for the blessings when the north winds blow. Here in my part of the country, the north winds, although they're cold, sometimes they bring the Chinook winds. That's where the warm Pacific air blows up around the north end of the mountains, and it comes roaring through, and it gives us a breath of spring in the deepest winter. It's a beautiful thing. And I'm sorry, South Dakota and Michigan. By the time you guys get the Chinook winds, we've sucked all the warmth out of it, and they suck for you. But for us here in the north, it's some of the only bright spots that we have in winter. It can be hard being alive. You know, it is hard. I've had my share of difficulties. When I lived in Papua New Guinea, I make it sound really cool, but for the 2100 for the 2100 days ish that I was there, it may have been maybe a little more, maybe a little less. 7 years at 365, so 2,500 days ish. For every week I was there, I was sick with malaria for one day. A seventh of my time, 15% of my time was spent sick. And I had a lot of time to think. And my mom always made being sick kind of a happy time. We would watch videos. They'd run the generator a little bit more because we didn't have power there. We lived there a lot the same way that I live here. Solar panels, generator, batteries. You know, sometimes your lights would run out in the evening because we had to use tail light bulbs, and they burn lots of power compared to the LEDs that I use now. And we didn't have to heat things there. It was always pretty warm. But when it got below, 27 degrees, or I'll do the conversion for you this time because it's easy, 80 degrees. When it hit 79, we were pulling on long pants and sweaters. Because we got acclimatized to it, I've lived in extremes of both wet climates. I've lived in the extreme hot. I've lived in the extreme cold. And they both have their challenges. But I know that a person can acclimate to either one. And it doesn't take all that long. We came from a cold, dry temperatures here. When we stepped off the plane in New Guinea, it was like walking into a sweat or steam room. I wouldn't even say a sauna, because saunas can be dry. There can be a lot of dry heat in a sauna, but it wasn't dry there. It was always wet. We walked off the airplane, the air-conditioned airplane. I can still feel it just talking about it now. The dampness rolled over you, and the heat, and the sun. The sun looked like it was about this big in the sky. It was enormous. Here, the sun looks like, like sometimes it looks like a quarter up in the sky. You'll take a picture of it and be like, ugh, it looked so much bigger when I took a picture of it. But there, the sun looked big. If you looked at it, it was, it was this glowing orb in the sky. And I know that it looks like that here too, but when you go down to the tropics, you see the difference. It's very remarkable. But yeah, and we could have complained, well, it's too hot. Oh, I wish we were back, and I did. I wish I could see snow. I lived there for 3 and 4 years at a time. So you miss snow. You miss the things that you're comfortable with and familiar with. Especially as a child. I grew up. My brother, he was a lot younger, so he didn't really understand those things. He didn't know snow. When he came back, snow was this foreign, weird thing. He was putting his hand up to next to the window as we're driving into the mountains in Montana. My grandparents picked us up down in the States. We landed in Arizona first. And on the way back up, when we found snow, we jumped out and made a little snowman next to the road. And my brother was sitting holding his hand next to the window, and he turns to Mom. He said, "It's so cold." And that's kind of how it was, but we got used to it really fast. We got some good Canadian cold weather gear, some good boots, and we adapted, and it was fun. It was a nice change. I ate a lot of ice cream that year, and I got fat. That's kind of where my being fat started. But that's a story for another day. I can see I'm starting to run out of time here. I probably only have about 1 or 2 minutes left of my recording ability. And so I'm just going to say at this time, have an awkwardly awesome day. Just remember that God loves you, and so do I.